On this edition of the NESN College Hockey Podcast, we'll give you our 3 stars of the week, our Hockey East Power Rankings, and preview the Friendship 4 College Hockey Tournament from Belfast, Northern Ireland. Hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of the NESN College Hockey Podcast. I'm your host, Dakota, Randall, alongside always Pat McAvoy. Pat, how are you?
I'm good. It was a good weekend in hockey. We spoke about Merrimack's games versus UMass a little. I'm happy with the result. I'm ready to talk about that a little bit with you. But all in all, I'm good. I'm ready to get going.
Great. It's good to hear. Listen, we got a lot to get to. A lot of interesting results over the weekend. A lot to look forward to in the next week, including the Friendship 4 tournament in Belfast, which you can watch on NESN. We'll get to that in a bit. Some important results in Hockey East, some reshuffling in the national polls. We'll give you our Hockey East power rankings as well. Before we go any further, I just want to give you the NESN schedule real quick. It all starts Friday with Northeastern versus UNH at 10 a.m. on NESN. Again, that is the first game of the Friendship 4 tournament in Belfast, Northern Ireland. 4 teams in that tournament. You know, think the Bean Pot, same kind of thing. We'll give you a little bit of background on that tournament later on. But again, so the first game, Northeastern versus UNH at 10 a.m. on NESN. Second game, Colgate versus Princeton. That's at 2 p.m. on NESN. And then later on, Boston College at Harvard at 4:30 p.m. on NESN. That is not a Friendship 4 tournament game. That is just a regular game. Saturday, the Friendship 4 third place game is at 10 a.m. on NESN Plus. And then the championship game is at 2 p.m. on NESN Plus. And then later on Saturday night, Quinnipiac at UMass at 7 p.m. on NESN. And again, all of our Hockey East coverage is brought to you by Rockland Trust, where each relationship matters. So we'll get into the Friendship 4 tournament in a little bit. We'll get into all that stuff. But first, we want to do what we always do, which is look back and give you our 3 stars of the week in Hockey East. I'll start. I'm going to go with Tyler Madden of Northeastern. Northeastern swept Maine. We talked about that series a lot last week in last week's episode. Big series for both teams. Northeastern swept Maine. They looked really good. Madden had a hat trick and an assist the first night, and had an assist in the next game. He now has 11 goals and 8 assists. His 11 goals are tied for first place in the country, and the 19 points are 5th. So Tyler Madden had a big weekend. Has been probably Northeastern's best player all season long. And again, I thought it was a really strong weekend for the Huskies. They can pick up 2 wins against a good Maine team, and Tyler Madden was at the center of it. So he is my first star of the week.
For our next star of the week, we have Sammy Tavernier, senior forward for Merrimack. On the weekend, he had 3 assists and a solid weekend for Merrimack against UMass. He set up the game winner, and he set up the game tying goal Friday night in Amherst, and then he had 2 primary assists the next night in the team's 3-2 loss. So all in all, we talked about this game, and we're going to get into it a little bit more later on in the show. But solid weekend for Merrimack, and it started with their senior forward who paved the way against a strong Minutemen squad.
Yeah, he had a great game, and again, we know what Merrimack is this season. They're not going to make too much noise, but they've had some good results lately, and he's been at the center of it.
Yep.
So third star of the week goes to Angus Cruikshank of UNH. He scored 2 goals Saturday, including the game winner in the Wildcats' 3-2 overtime win against Michigan. He now has 2 overtime winners for UNH this season, and more than anything, UNH lost the first game of that series. We'll get to that in a little bit, but they lost the first game. That gave them 3 consecutive losses, I believe, and it was just important for them to win that second game. And Angus Cruikshank came through the big goal, something he obviously has a penchant for this season. So he is my third star of the week. So now, let's get right into some of the games that stuck out to us from last week. There were many, but I want to start again with Northeastern sweeping Maine. It was a big weekend for the Huskies, as they now are just a point out of first place in the hockey standings behind Providence. They got a 5-2 win and then a 3-2 win. And again, I've been really impressed with Maine all season long. I think they are an inferior team to Northeastern, but not by much. I think they're a competitive team. I think they're going to make some noise once the Hockey East tournament comes around. And I thought Maine played well in these 2 games for the most part, but Northeastern kind of just showed everybody why they are the better team in picking up those 2 W's. Again, Tyler Madden had a big weekend, as we said. The Huskies now are 8-4-2. A small slip up for Maine, but again, I still think they're good. They're now 7-5-2. Looking forward to see what they do going forward from here. But yeah, overall, strong weekend for Northeastern, and has them up at 2nd in the Hockey East standings.
It really was a pretty good weekend for those guys. I'm glad to see that they're moving in that direction. For me, the first game that I was interested in was Harvard, then number 10, currently number 9, Harvard versus RPI. Harvard's a school and a team that we've talked about on the show the last few weeks extensively. They haven't played many games, but they are one of the few teams in the country that are undefeated still. They're at 6-0 now. And so they defeated RPI 6-3. And so what stuck out to me the most about this game and this team in general is their offense has been unbelievable to start the year. So after scoring 6 against RPI, now they're averaging 5.5 per game through the 6. They've scored 7 or more. They've scored 6 or more 3 times during the season, and I'm not surprised they've catapulted so far in the polls. But then sophomore forward Casey Dornbach was huge for Harvard this weekend. He had a hat trick, and he really led the way. Although he had half the goals, but he just led the way, set the tone for the offense for the team, and they're I think better than expected out the gate.
Yeah, Harvard again. I've been kind of wondering because a lot of people think really highly of them. They got a lot of preseason love before they started their season later than most teams. I've been kind of waiting for a marquee win, or just to see how they look in one of those kind of games. And they're going to get a chance this weekend. We'll get to that a little bit later. But yeah, overall, good. They looked good in that game, and yeah, Harvard. I'm coming around. They look like they're for real. Another game I want to highlight: Penn State and Ohio State split. We talked about this series last weekend. One of the ones I was looking forward to. Just some powerhouse Big Ten hockey. Both teams just look great. The first game was like 5-4, and the next one was 4-3. Regardless, a lot of good hockey. Alex Limoges for Penn State now has multiple point games in 5 straight games. He's really carried them all season. He's been excellent. While Liam Folks has scored a goal in 4 straight, also for the Nittany Lions. So again, they're getting some great play out of those guys. And Ohio State also is a great team. And I think both teams are going to be in the conversation at the end of the season. Obviously, for the national tournament, I could see either team making it to the Frozen Four, if not both. And it was just, I watched a little bit of those games, and just a lot of talent on the ice. 2 great teams, great hockey, and yeah, a lot of fun to watch. So.
Absolutely. And then, so I've been alluding to it so far a couple times throughout this episode, but so last week we spoke a lot about this Merrimack versus UMass matchup last weekend. We interviewed Coach Scott Bork last week and previewed the games, and I don't think they disappointed. Merrimack, they got a point this weekend against Amherst, and so that's surprising on a team that really hasn't been that successful so far.
Right.
But they've had a couple games against quality opponents in which they stepped up.
Yeah.
And I think that's the perfect way to describe it. They have showed some spunk, and they really did versus the Minutemen this weekend. In game 1, they scored first, and then UMass tied it up not long after, but then it was a tie game, even game throughout. I watched actually most of it on NESN's networks. But it was a tie game for the most part, and then in the third period, UMass took their first lead of the game, which was surprising because they entered the game at number 7.
Yeah. And
so they didn't get a lead till the third period, but then under 3 minutes to go, Merrimack ties it up, and then it goes to overtime and ends in a tie. So great game for Merrimack. But then another thing that is interesting is that although Merrimack lost the second game against Amherst, they really did play well. They scored the first 2 goals. They had a 2-goal lead midway through the second period, but then UMass was able to score 3 unanswered. And game 2 looked like it was going to overtime as well. But then Cal Kufiuk was big for the Minutemen. He scored 2 goals on the night, including the game winner with just 42 seconds left. So in a weekend that could have been disastrous for UMass, they still came away with a win. Merrimack got a point. So I think from the perspectives of both coaches, it was probably a fine weekend in the sense that UMass got a point and a win, and Merrimack did get the point against a much more successful opponent. But it was just a solid 2-game slate of hockey between those 2 squads, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, a couple things. I think it sort of reaffirms what we've always said about hockey is that there really are no easy outs, and that any team can win on any given night. The quality of the hockey really in all the programs is so high that it's not really a surprise that Merrimack was able to get that result. Those things happen, but it is a little concerning for UMass because now. They lost to UNH a couple weeks ago. Then they lost to BU last week, unless I have the weeks flopped either way. And then now they tie Merrimack. And again, yes, there are no easy outs in Hockey East, but UMass is probably the best team in the conference. And really, they should win all of those games in reality. So again, I'm not concerned about the Minutemen, but I'm kind of wondering, are they just kind of hitting a little bit of a malaise here early on, and then they're going to turn it on as we get into the meat of the season? I don't know, but just kind of curious to see how they rebound and how they do going forward.
Absolutely.
So some other notable games: UNH and Michigan split. I think the big thing here for New England hockey fans, at least, is Johnny Beecher for Michigan, the Bruins' first-round draft pick. A lot of people went up to Durham to watch him play. He had 2 goals in Friday night's 4-1 win for the Wolverines. He now has 4 goals and 4 assists on the season. Overall, I've only been able to watch him a little bit. I watched that game. He looks good, and when he got drafted, a lot of the talk was, the Bruins getting another, sort of defense-first forward who doesn't have a lot of scoring touch, and people kind of criticized that pick. And then he went and played with the amateur team, and sort of lit it up on the international stage and looked really good. And he hasn't gone off to a crazy start with Michigan by any means, but I think he's been impressive. He plays a heavy game, does a lot of things well. He's supposedly a great guy in the locker room. His teammates love him, and scored a couple of goals this weekend, and he looked really good. So a lot for Bruins fans to be encouraged about. And then Cornell with a 2-1 win over Quinnipiac. Then Quinnipiac loses to Colgate. Quinnipiac now 2-6-1 in their last 9, so I'm kind of concerned about them. They started out so high in the polls, now they're all the way out, and they're really struggling. But also, not really surprising considering how good Cornell is.
Yeah, absolutely. Cornell had a big weekend. They beat Quinnipiac, and then they also beat Princeton 5-1.
I just dropped everything over here, my phone, my Tupperware. It's a disaster.
The biggest thing I thought I took from Cornell's weekend was that, so like I just said, they scored 7 goals on the weekend, number 2 team in the country. Of those 7 goals, they were by 7 different players. No one scored multiple goals throughout the weekend, and I think that just goes to show the depth of this Cornell squad, and I'm not surprised that they're number 2 in the polls, and honestly, maybe eventually they've reached number 1, but it was a good weekend for them, and it just shows how deep of a roster they have, and it's important at this time of the year.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. Cornell looks really impressive, and definitely one of the top teams in the country. They're great, a lot of fun to watch. Also, Providence ties, then beats UConn. Providence now first place in Hockey East. Also a kind of a good tie for UConn. They've had some sort of inspiring results recently. They're nothing special, but they've had some good results here, and it's a good tie for them. But more importantly, Providence, led by Jack Dugan once again. They get 3 points out of that weekend, and now we're in sole possession of first place in Hockey East. Minnesota State blew doors on Alaska Anchorage to stay atop the polls. Not really a surprise. Minnesota State, one of the best teams in the country, if not the best. Alaska Anchorage is kind of a spunky team, but Minnesota State should have dominated them, and they did. Denver splits with Western Michigan, who is good. Don't sleep on Western Michigan. They are a very good team. So not a surprise that Denver got the split there. Denver's still great. I don't think it really says anything bad about them. Just Western Michigan is, for real, a good team. And finally, Minnesota Duluth sweeping Colorado College. Minnesota Duluth been a little up and down. A weird start to the season for the 2-time defending national champions. But they looked great in sweeping Colorado College. So maybe they are just going to take off from here and really sort of get on a roll. We'll find out. So now, as we do every week, I'd like to go over the polls real quick. Pat, you usually have some takeaways from these, so we'll just get right underway. Number 1, as we said, Minnesota State. And number 2, Cornell, followed by North Dakota, Denver, Notre Dame, Clarkson, Penn State, Minnesota Duluth, Harvard. Number 10, UMass, and then Ohio State, Northeastern, Providence, Boston College, UMass Lowell, Bowling Green, Western Michigan, Omaha, Wisconsin, and then Michigan State at number 20. Some of the other teams that received some votes: Northern Michigan, Arizona State, RIT, Maine, UNH, Quinnipiac, Alaska Fairbanks, Dartmouth, and then a bunch of other schools, including BU. But anyway, not too much shuffling in the polls, but there are more than a few things that I think are noteworthy.
Absolutely. And so the thing that I noticed most, I think, from it, so biggest drop of the week was UMass from 7 to 10, and I think this is expected after they tied and then beat Merrimack, but they squeaked out that win. So I'm not surprised they dropped, and honestly, I kind of thought last week they were going to be a little further down, so maybe this makes up for it. But so 10 kind of seems like the perfect spot for them right now. Notre Dame dropped from 3 to 5 after tying and losing to Michigan State, and that I'm surprised they dropped as far as they did. But
yeah, agreed. I would agree with that.
But I mean, they'll be fine. But then on the other side, Michigan State, went from unranked to now they're number 20 in the polls. And so Michigan State, I think, is a team that is sneaky because, like I already just mentioned, obviously, that they beat Notre Dame once this weekend. And they've had a couple strong weeks. They swept Michigan last week, and then they split with Penn State the week before. And so Michigan State, it looks like they're kind of starting to put things together. And then also North Dakota, they've been rising. They went from 5 to now 3 after they swept St. Cloud State. And so North Dakota State was a team that just 2 weeks ago was number 9 in the polls, and now they're all the way up to 3. So it just goes to show that at this point in the season, you never really know where the polls are going to be, because all these teams are so strong at the top. So it just takes a couple weeks to go from like this right here, 9 to 3. So who knows what the rest of the season's going to give us,
Yeah, true, and not a surprise North Dakota has surged all the way up there year in, year out. They're one of the more excellent programs in college hockey. But yeah, it's definitely, to see them rise so fast has been interesting. And, hopefully I can get a chance to watch them soon because they always play a really exciting brand of hockey, and I love to check them out.
Absolutely.
Okay, so this week we don't have an interview for you. Long story, just one of those weeks. Teams over in Ireland, a lot of hockey's teams in non-conference doing stuff. Thanksgiving week is kind of a weird week. So this week, it's not exactly midway through the season, but we're kind of close. So we thought it'd be a good time to give you our Hockey East Power Rankings. Not the same as the standings. These are our own power rankings, so much more subjective. I'm not going to spend too much time on these, but we'll just go through them real quick. So I will start. I'll also give you records. Pat, you don't have to do that, but I'll give records just for the people at home. Number 1, I have UMass, who is 8-3-1 overall, 4-3-1 in conference. I think overall, we talked about it. They've had some slip-ups here. I really don't read too much into those. I think at the end of the day, they are the best team in the conference, top to bottom, and also the team I think most built for the postseason and what they're going to have, what it takes to beat some of those non-conference teams, especially the teams in the Big Ten, the teams from Minnesota, Denver. I just like the way UMass is built, and I think overall, when push comes to shove, I still think they're the best team in the conference. Number 2, I have Providence, 7-4-3 overall, 5-3-2 in conference. Jack Dugan and Tice Thompson, 1st and 2nd overall in scoring in the country. They've been excellent all season long. Nate Lehman's a great coach, always gets the most out of his guys. Providence, if I believe UMass is number 1, but I don't think Providence is too far behind. I could easily see them going on a deep postseason run. Number 3, Northeastern, fresh off a big weekend over Maine. 8-4-2 overall, 5-3-1 in conference. Huskies, they're a little more inconsistent than some of the other teams at the top of the conference and some of the other teams in the national polls. They'll have some head-scratching results here and there. But again, when push comes to shove, I think they are one of the elite teams in Hockey East. And definitely number 3 for me. Number 4, UMass Lowell, 7-3-4 overall, 4-1-3 in conference. Just another season where they're just rock solid. One of the best teams in the conference, and they play in a really gritty brand of hockey. Not a lot of star power, but they just get it done and they keep winning. Number 5, Boston College, 7-4-0 overall, 5-2-0 in conference. Probably the most talented team in all of Hockey East. And we've talked to some coaches early on here, and just kind of watching them. That freshman class that came, and they have so many new players on that team. Just doesn't look like they've hit their stride yet. I expect as the season goes deeper, eventually they will gel more and they will play better towards the end. But there have been some iffy results here early on, so for that reason, I have to keep them outside of the top 4. But I still think they belong at number 5, and by the end of the season, I could see them easily being, top 3. They have that much talent. Number 6, Maine, probably the surprise team of the season, led by Mitch Fossier, 7-5-2 overall. 4-4-2 in conference. Again, Mitch Fossier has had a great season for them. But really top to bottom across that roster, they've got some great contributions, and they've been one of the surprise teams of Hockey East. And one of those teams where, when the Hockey East tournament comes around, no one's probably going to pick them to win the tournament or anything, but it would not shock me if they make it to TD Garden for the championship weekend. Number 7, UNH, 6-5-1 overall, 3-3-0 in conference. Kind of in the same boat as Maine, but I think UNH has fallen off a little bit more here over the last couple of weeks. Looking to see if they turn things around here. Hopefully it gets started in Belfast. Obviously, I'm a UNH fan, so I'd like to see them beat all the teams on this list. But right now, they're number 7 in my rankings. Number 8, BU, 4-4-5 overall, 3-3-4 in conference. Again, I think they're not as good this season. They obviously had the big injury to Amante, but they still do have a ton of talent. And as we saw with the game against UMass, they can beat anybody on any given night. just the quality of that program. But yeah, just obviously a down year for the Terriers, so they're at number 8. Number 9, Merrimack, 2-8-2 overall, 1-4-2 in conference. We've talked about them a lot here over the last couple of weeks. They are what they are, but they have proven to not be an easy out, as they've kind of given some good teams fits. So some inspired hockey out of the Warriors. And the 2 left. Number 10, Yukon, 3-6-3 overall, 2-4-2 in conference. We've talked about a lot of Russians on that team, so they kind of play an entertaining brand of hockey. And they've also had some good results against some good teams, but they're at the bottom of the rankings really, both in the standings and on my power rankings. And then number 11, dead last, University of Vermont, 1-8-1 overall, 0-6-1 in conference. It is what it is. Bad year for the Catamounts, worst team in the conference. Maybe that changes as the season goes deeper. I don't personally see it. It is what it is. They're a tough season for them so far. So those are my power rankings, Pat, and I'm almost out of breath. So I'm going to pass it off to you to see if you have things any different than I do.
Got to give it to you. Pretty solid rankings. Mine is not 100% different. There are some places that we thought the same way, but there were definitely a couple where I wasn't sure. But so number 1, UMass Amherst, and so it's self-explanatory. UMass is one of the best teams in the country, but I was dangerously close to taking them off of my number 1 spot this week. UMass was there, but if they have another tough weekend, they will not be number 1 for me next week. Number 2 for me right now is Northeastern, and so we've talked about him a lot today. Tyler Madden, he had a great weekend, and off of the way that they've been playing lately, I think they're competing with UMass for that top spot because of the fact that Northeastern seems to be going in a positive direction, and UMass has scuffled of late.
Yeah.
Number 3 for me is UMass Lowell. And so the reason why I picked UMass Lowell in this spot is strictly, they're a solid team. They're ranked in the polls. They're a good team in general. But their goalie, Tyler Wall, I think he's had a great season so far.
He's been a brick
wall. Solid player. And the way I view it is the team that has the best goalie is going to be the most successful, whether or not you have other skaters around you.
It's a good point.
And so with him in net, I think they could beat anybody. Number 4, I have Providence. Providence, they've been ranked pretty much for all season. They've had a couple really solid wins. They've kind of had a couple of tough losses. Providence is a team that is solid, and I think this is a good spot for them. But there hasn't really been many marquee moments for them that maybe have pushed me into the upper echelon yet. So they're in a solid spot, but I wouldn't doubt if they dropped going forward. BC, for me, is number 5.
We both had them number 5.
They're a great team, and so we've talked about it a lot, how they went through the 4-game losing streak, but they've won 5 straight. And BC, I think, has put maybe it's because Jerry York's got inducted to the Hall of Fame, but they seem to be just clicking on all cylinders at the moment. They're a deep team. They have 4 different players this season already that have 5 goals apiece. So you never really know where the goal is going to be coming from. They're a good team. I think they're starting to hit their stride. Number 6, I have Maine. So again, this is another team, and I keep on saying these are teams we've talked about a lot. Well, in reality, all of them are. So I don't really need to keep saying that.
We do talk a lot about hockeys for a reason, so makes sense.
So Maine, they're a good team. They're solid. They've had a couple good moments, but they've also shown a couple weaknesses. So 6, I think, is middle of the line for Hockey East. But we've talked about, like you said earlier, each team is a tough out.
I think a good way to describe Maine is they are the best of the underdogs.
I would agree with that.
I think the top 5 is pretty clear who you're deciding with for the top 5 in terms of power rankings for Hockey East. And then everybody after that is kind of an underdog, including BU. But I would say Maine is the best of the underdogs.
Absolutely. So. And so with my number 7, you might actually be upset with this one a little bit. My number 7 is BU. I put them at 7 over UNH, who I have at 8.
That's fine.
Just because of the fact that BU's
You're allowed to be wrong.
They've been playing really well lately. They beat Amherst. They beat and tied Vermont. BU, I think, and they're one of the best programs year in, year out. And although this year has not been what they typically are, they're a team that I wouldn't doubt if they were to put together a late season surge. But just off of recent play, specifically against Amherst, I think they're a solid team. UNH is 1-2-1 over the last 4, so they're good. And in reality, UNH probably had a better season than BU to this point. But strictly off of the last couple weeks play, I'd take BU. Number 9 for me, my 9, 10, 11, same as you. Merrimack's my number 9. Strong weekend versus Amherst. They've split with UConn in the last couple of weeks. Merrimack's a young team that I think has a bright future. Record-wise, it might not show it this season, but I think they're taking a step in that right direction, although most likely, when I use that term for some of these other teams, it's like, for example, BC, a step in the right direction is hopefully going to make a late season playoff push. For Merrimack, they're going to maybe put together a couple wins, a couple solid games.
Yes, they're going to tie a team in the polls.
Absolutely.
So,
UConn is what they are. 1-1-2 over the last 4. They've had a couple okay moments. They're okay. And then last but not least, Vermont. And Vermont's 1-8-1 on the year. They've struggled mightily.
Yeah.
But, they're Hockey East, so who knows what they'll do moving forward. But
as
of right now, that's where I got them.
Wouldn't shock me if Vermont upset any of the teams on this list.
Absolutely.
But they are a worthy team to be at the bottom of the rankings right now.
Absolutely.
Good power rankings, Pat.
I know. We did a pretty good job at that.
I think we killed those power rankings. Not going to lie. Maybe we'll just stop doing interviews for the rest of the season and just do power rankings every week.
We might have to.
Who doesn't love Hockey East power rankings?
Eventually, Hockey East is going to come call and ask us to do it for them. Maybe they'll live stream us or something.
Yeah, maybe we're available. Okay, we don't have too much time left. I want to get into the NESN schedule real quick. I know I did it earlier, but I just want to reiterate. It starts Friday with Northeastern taking on UNH at 10 a.m. on NESN. That is Game 1 of the Friendship 4 tournament in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Game 2, Colgate against Princeton at 2 p.m. on NESN. And then later on, in a non-Friendship 4 game, Boston College at Harvard, 4:30 p.m. on NESN. And then Saturday, the Friendship 4 third-place game at 10 a.m. on NESN Plus, the championship game at 2 p.m. on NESN Plus, and then later on, Quinnipiac at UMass at 7 p.m. on NESN. So, what is the Friendship 4 tournament, you might ask? Well, I'll tell you. It is. So first of all, the 4 teams competing are UNH, Northeastern, Colgate, and Princeton. I guess if I had to pick a favorite, I'd probably pick Northeastern at this point, but who knows? And so, yeah, it's a tournament in Belfast, Northern Ireland. For those that don't know or don't know their geography, Northern Ireland is part of the UK, whereas the rest of Ireland is an independent nation. I believe I got that right. I might have gotten it wrong. Regardless, I've done a lot of Ireland research recently because myself and my fiance are going to Ireland in middle of March for 7 days.
It's a light flex.
Yeah,
nice.
I know. I've never been to Europe.
Jealous.
I've been out of the country to like Puerto Rico, Canada, other places, but not been to Europe ever. So I'm pretty excited about that. I wish I could have gone for this. This would have been pretty cool. Wear my UNH sweater and go to this game. But either way, so yeah, it's a college hockey tournament. This is the 5th straight year. Teams play for the Belpot Trophy, which I have to believe is a combination of Belfast and Beanpot. I don't know for sure, but regardless, that is what they are playing for. The past winners are UMass Lowell, Vermont, Clarkson, and Union. So yeah, UNH, Northeastern, Colgate, and Princeton will be vying to join that list. So where did this all come from? Well, I didn't know.
I don't know.
To be completely honest, I knew that it existed, but I didn't know the genesis. So this is the quote pulled direct from the About section on the website. So it says, the Friendship 4 tournament celebrates the Boston-Belfast Sister City Agreement. And as an aside, I believe that agreement was signed in 2014, and then the first tournament was in 2015. I might be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. To celebrate that agreement by helping to foster stronger cultural, economic, and academic relationships between Northern Ireland and America. Using amateur sport, it creates opportunities to unite communities, providing a conduit to revitalize the cultural ties between America and Northern Ireland. So, cool stuff and a cool opportunity for these teams.
That is pretty sweet.
They, I don't know how much time they're going to get to go explore.
Yeah.
But regardless, it's a pretty cool thing.
Sad thing for them, they most likely won't be able to go Black Friday shopping.
No, that's a good point.
But they're probably going to be having more fun anyway.
Yeah, I would rather be in Northern Ireland doing Belfast, Northern Ireland things than going Black Friday shopping. But that's just me.
I agree 100% with that.
So yeah, that's cool. It's a cool tournament. Sort of a cool reason behind it. Not necessarily a cause, but you know what I'm saying. The genesis of it is pretty neat. Good thing there. And you can watch all those games on NESN or NESN Plus this weekend. If you didn't catch the schedule the 2 times that I mentioned it, go online, check it out. And good teams too. So I think it's going to be some entertaining hockey and pretty cool stuff. I'm excited to tune in and watch those.
Absolutely.
So we don't have a lot of time left. As always, we want to get into the games that we're looking forward to this weekend.
Yep.
why don't you go first, Pat? What's your first game?
Biggest one of the weekend for me, Boston College versus Harvard. So Boston College, like I just mentioned, they're surging. They're a team that I think is going to be very strong come playoff time. But Harvard also is going to be right there with them, 6-0 right now. Their offense is firing like crazy right now. And so I want to know if Harvard's offense can keep it going, or will BC keep going? It's like a immovable object versus an unstoppable force. We'll see what happens.
Yes, we will. Yeah, that's going to be a great game. I think it's more so for Harvard. It's an opportunity for them to get a real marquee win and show, yes, we are for real. And likewise for Boston College, that's a big game for them. Harvard is up to number 9. BC is, I forget, where is BC, like 14 or something like that. Yeah, 14. So yeah, great game and a big opportunity to make a statement for both teams. I am looking forward to Michigan Tech at Alaska Fairbanks. Two good teams that play an entertaining style of hockey. Alaska Fairbanks probably the better of the two Alaska programs. Michigan Tech, one of like a million Michigan schools. But they both again play a really cool style of hockey. And I don't know why, I just take interest in all these games, especially when they're in Alaska.
Yeah, true.
I like watching Alaska Fairbanks. They get a ton of penalties, which is cool if you like that kind of hockey that just gets really dirty. So yeah, I don't know if I'll be able to tune in, but if I can find a way, I certainly will, because I think that's going to be a great game.
Absolutely. And another one I'm looking at is Penn State. So Penn State, they're playing against Merrimack, and then they're facing UMass Lowell. So it's pretty cool, first off, to see that they're traveling all the way to Mass. We got a couple good programs from Massachusetts that they're taking on. Will Merrimack be able to get another good result? And for them, maybe if they can squeak out another tie, that'd be pretty sweet. If they can get a win versus Penn State, then that would be great. That'd be a great game right there.
That would be great for the Warriors.
But all in all, Penn State coming here to Massachusetts to take on two of our strong Hockey East programs. It's cool to see, and I'm sure there'll be two pretty solid games.
Yeah, agreed. I am. I'm interested to see how Merrimack does. I am just overall looking forward to seeing Penn State play, particularly against UMass Lowell. Those are two great teams, and I'm just excited to watch the Nittany Lions. If I can find that game on TV, I will. If I can get to UMass Lowell, maybe I will. Maybe I'll have some free time. Regardless, those are two interesting games. I agree. A couple more for me. Notre Dame and Bowling Green with a home and home. That's number 5 Notre Dame versus number 6 Bowling Green. I mean, the Irish, one of the best teams in the country, but Bowling Green has some marquee wins this season. They are a very underrated program. They're in the polls, again, they're number 16, but people never talk about Bowling Green as if they're one of the better programs in college hockey, which I think they're starting to prove. Man, they're not elite or anything, but they are a program that needs to be respected. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if Bowling Green picks up a win this weekend, if not 2. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. And then I think the real highlight in terms of from the national scene anyway, Minnesota State, 2 games at Minnesota Duluth. That is number 1 Minnesota State at number 8 Minnesota Duluth, the 2-time defending national champions. Speaks for itself. You could make a pretty compelling case that those are, in actuality, the 2 best teams in the country. So it's a heavyweight fight, and I'm really curious to see how that goes.
And then for the final game that I'm interested in on the weekend, so we got Boston University hosting Cornell. And so we've talked about BU, they're number 7 in my poll. They played well recently after they beat Amherst, beat and tied Vermont, tied Providence. So they've kind of put together a strong stretch recently. But Cornell, number 2 in the country, 8-0. Can BU hand them their first loss? Can they get a marquee win? Maybe help put BU in that, push them in the right direction towards the playoffs, or will Cornell continue to just steamroll over everybody?
Yeah, that's going to be a great game. Big opportunity for BU to get a big win, and also just if you're in the area and you want to go watch a good college hockey game, maybe that's a good head over to Agganis and check that out, because Cornell is one of the best programs, undefeated,
seriously,
one of the best teams in the country, and but I wouldn't be surprised if BU gave them a game and even beat them. So yeah, that's a great one, and definitely looking forward to see how that one goes.
Absolutely.
So yeah, again, a lot of great games to look forward to this weekend. Really looking forward to the Friendship 4 tournament in Belfast, and again, you can watch all those games on the NESN networks this weekend. Should be a lot of fun. Should be another great weekend in college hockey. I don't really have anything else to add, Pat. What about you? Anything?
I'm excited for Thanksgiving. Have a happy
Yes.
Thanksgiving, Dakota.
Yes, pleasantries. I like pleasantries. Happy Thanksgiving.
I'm excited for Thanksgiving and for some hockey.
I'd ask you what your favorite Thanksgiving food is, but I think that's one of the more annoying generic questions that people ask people. Like if we had an interview this week and I had asked whoever it was what their favorite Thanksgiving food is, this podcast should be canceled because that's the worst question that anybody asks.
And that's fair.
That is fair. So again, thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great Thanksgiving, and catch us next week.